Those who are not following the next press conference can kindly leave the room. And we start. Okay. So, good afternoon to everybody. Welcome to the press conference on the mobility package with Vice President Maroš Šefčovič, Commissioner for Transport Violeta Bulc, and Commissioner for Employment and Social Affairs Marianne Thyssen. As you know, today the Commission adopted an ambitious mobility package, a set of initiatives for clean, competitive, socially fair, and connected mobility. The package is formed by a political communication outlining a long-term plan for clean, socially fair, competitive mobility till 2025 and beyond, a first set of 8 legislative initiatives with a special focus on road transport, and a number of non-legislative accompanying documents of policy support measures. You will find outside and online a press release, a Q&A memo, and 4 fact sheets, a beautiful press pack that clarify all the aspects of this package. And a technical briefing will follow, so please save your more technical questions for later. I give the floor to Vice President Šefčovič, please.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, my dear colleagues, commissioners. As I have said already a few times, the Energy Union is not about the energy only. It is about the jobs, growth, investments, about the climate change and the environment, social fairness, and of course, the transport. And today's mobility package is therefore part of the broader picture of the modernization of our economy and the Energy Union. The Commission initiatives related to the mobility are the last missing piece of the Energy Union agenda after the Clean Energy for All package, which we adopted last November. In a few moments, Commissioner Bulc will guide you through the novelties of today's legislative proposals, and Commissioner Thyssen will present the important social aspects of these proposals. But if you allow me beforehand, I would like to say a few words about why the whole package for clean, competitive and connected mobility is so important. It is a real example of how the Commission under the President Juncker works, meaning across portfolios. We announced most of the measures in the low-emission mobility strategy adopted the last year, and now it's the time to implement it, to implement this strategy. There remains great challenges. Quarter of all greenhouse gas emissions in Europe come from transport. We have 400,000 premature deaths in a year in Europe every year, and these deaths which are caused by the air pollution are not longer acceptable, nor for our citizens, nor for our cities or the mayors. And on top of it, we have to bear in mind that we expect that the passenger transport will increase by 40% until 2050, and the freight transport even more, by 60%. We must therefore decouple mobility and the greenhouse gas emissions. And we have done it across Europe's economy in the past decade, and we intend to do it in the coming decades in the field as transport as well. Therefore, today's package and the transport operators will play an important role. And I think that the sector will have to reinvent the wheel and find new innovative ways. But the package is not only about lowering emissions. Transport and mobility are key for our economy. They create millions of jobs, growth, innovation, and investment. And we therefore adopted a comprehensive approach, and this very well corresponds with the broader Energy Union project and with very important transport segment in particular. The package therefore covers social and employment aspects, the internal market, the numerous challenges for the automotive industry, and of course, climate change and air quality. Technology and innovation will lead to a fundamental change of the transport sector, meaning innovative mobility services such as new platforms for multimodal travel or for freight operation based on precise data logistics and data analysis. The entire concept of vehicles is being reinvented. Alternative powertrains as well as connected and self-driving vehicles will change consumer behavior. Business models, they will bring the changes into the labor intensity, and they will clearly call for the new skilled requirements for our workforce. And we see an acceleration of the global competition for innovation with the new entrants from the tech sectors or from other continents which challenge the current excellence of our industry. This is the moment for Europe's transport to reinvent, renovate, and rejuvenate. That is the only way for Europe to remain a world leader. And we must continue to produce the world's best logistics, best infrastructure, best cars. We must sustain the Made in Europe's brand. To put it simply, I very much want that we will continue to manufacture best cars in Europe, and that we will be able to put them on the best infrastructure for alternative fuels, and in the future on the best infrastructure for autonomous driving. Because only this would ensure that we also create high-quality jobs with the good working conditions here in Europe. What I want to underline is that we cannot afford the European Kodak moment, where we fail to understand the role of the changing technologies. For this, we have to support innovation and bring it to the market. The best technology is useless if nobody uses it. And that is why we would like to provide incentives, support, and obligations where necessary to promote this innovation. This includes today's proposals on Eurovignette, electronic tolling systems, monitoring and reporting of CO2 emissions from heavy-duty vehicles like trucks. And these efforts will continue later this year with our proposals for the new CO2 standards for cars, vans, and our commitment for the first ever CO2 standards for heavy-duty vehicles in Europe. We will also look into the rollout of infrastructure for connected and automated driving and the charging infrastructure for alternative fuels. Moreover, we will look into the strategic issue of battery technologies and manufacturing in Europe. I believe we should replicate kind of Airbus type of the approach and introduce it into the cooperation on making sure that the great batteries are manufactured in Europe as well. But we will come to this later this year, and therefore I should make it very clear that we would have a second wave of the proposals at the end of 2017, where we want to present the proposals for the new CO2 standards for cars and vans after 2021. And we also want to draw the conclusions from the GEAR 2030 working group, which is the high-level working party for future of the car industry. We want to also address and take into account the initiatives related to alternative fuel infrastructure and battery manufacturing in Europe, and to see how we can financially support them, how we can accelerate the development. And we want to review the Clean Vehicle Directive, the rules for combined transport of goods, and the access to the market for bus and coach services. And as I said, early next year, we will come with some of the initiatives explained in today's communication. In this regard, let me remind you that the Commission also reacted to the diesel scandal last year with improved test cycles and ambitious proposals for type approval reform. Therefore, I am pleased that the discussion can finally begin following the Monday's agreement between Member States, and that we can now start the co-legislative process between Council and the Parliament on this proposal. I think this is very important for consumers, it's very important for the air quality, for fighting climate change, and ultimately for the industry as a whole. To conclude on today's proposal, I would like to say that they very much focus on the road transport sector, which is very important for our economy. but it has a great number of challenges with cumbersome administrative practices, difficult working conditions, complex rules, illegal practices, and diverging interests. And therefore, I'm very proud that together with my colleagues in the podium, but with other colleagues in the college room, that today we have decided to address these challenges. We have intense and very political discussions on these topics. We've been working on this package for more than a year, and I'm very glad that today we managed to conclude it and present it to you. And if you allow me, I would leave it now to the Commissioner Bulc and Commissioner Thyssen to explain you the proposals in more detail. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner Bulc.
Thank you, Maros, and good afternoon also in my name, and thank you for being with us here today at this late hour. Road transport is indeed a crucial sector in European economy, and it employs 5 million people directly in road transport, and there are over 560,000 companies in EU in road freight transport, especially SMEs. So what are we trying really to do with this package? There are many elements in the package, and summary, all of the proposals aim to make road transport more transparent, smooth, inclusive, and fair, and of course, to serve our people, citizens, but also enable businesses to do their work better. That's why we are working, and this package is addressing 4 major topics. First one is a topic of functioning of the road internal market. Second one is to ensure proper, fairer working conditions for drivers. Third, to address some of the environmental challenges. As we've heard, Vice President, the transport is already contributing a very large share, and considering the growth that is envisioned in passengers and in freight road transport, we have to act. And fourth, make sure we make the best possible use of all digital opportunities to bring higher level of efficiency into place. So how do we plan to achieve these goals? First, let me elaborate on the internal market. Here, it's really focused on establishing level playing field in road haulage. We want to see a fairer and deeper internal market for road haulage companies. Concretely, we propose to stop letterbox companies fully. Today, some fake companies are created just to avoid legal obligations, like paying taxes or social insurance for their employees. Our proposal will bring this practice to an end by ensuring that transport companies are established in the member state from where they manage their business. We will also make sure that the cooperation between national authorities is strengthened to detect all the frauds. Second, the package will also address cabotage. The term cabotage means the right for a foreign operator to transport services within a particular territory. Current rules are far too complex, making controls by national authorities almost impossible. We propose now to simplify those rules, allowing an unlimited number of cabotage operations during 5 days period after the completion of an international service. This provides more flexibility for operators and facilitates controls at the same time. We also propose to increase the number of controls progressively to cover no less than 3% of all cabotage operations by 2023. But let me be clear, we do not propose a further liberalization nor further closing of the market as it is. Our new rules would also reduce the number of trucks running with no cargo on board, which directly contributes also to decarbonization of transport. Still today, more than 1 in 5 trucks on EU roads run empty. Second, on social. As we are creating fairer conditions for road haulage companies, we also want to ensure enhanced conditions for their employees, especially for their drivers. We want to give drivers the possibility to return home at least every 3 weeks. We also want to make sure that they do not take their weekends in the cabin, but spend them either at home or in a hotel accommodation when away. I want to be also very clear on this one. We are not changing the existing limits related to driving. 7 hours, 30 per day, 6 days a week maximum, or rest time, only providing some flexibility to organize returns home. The package introduces more clearly on the application of posting of workers' rules to the road transport sector, but I will let my colleague Marianne to go into details on this issue. At the same time, we will reduce red tape for companies. Today, companies have costly administration to complete when posting workers. Here again, we will simplify rules, reducing administrative burden and improve enforcement at the same time. These simplifications will ensure operators to save up to 1.4 billion euros per year. That leads me to the third element, decarbonization. Road charging is a means to a more sustainable infrastructure financing and to the transition to a low-emission mobility. We propose a general shift towards distance-based system by 2023 for trucks and by 2027 at the latest for other types of vehicles, including private cars. Such systems better reflect the user pay and polluter pays principle, and they're both fairer and also more efficient. The possibility to take into account the cost of air pollution and road charges, as well as the differentiation of charges according to CO2 performance of vehicles, will encourage and reward those who invest in clearer vehicles. We propose, concretely, that zero-emission vehicles, for example, electrical cars, enjoy a 75% discount on the price of road tolls. And that leads me to the last, but not least, which is digital part. Digital technologies will greatly improve the customer experience when it comes to road transport. One of my wishes in this package was to ensure we start putting in place the foundation for the rollout of digital services in road mode, bringing it on similar level with other modes and paving the way for multimodality solutions. One good example that I think people involved in road transport will really appreciate is the European electronic tolling system. We will propose common standard so that one onboard unit will be then used throughout European territory. That means common standard for this unit to be used to drive across the entire European Union. So what does that mean in practice? Instead of having to have accounts with many toll road operators across the EU, haulage companies will be able to choose one service provider to look after billing and invoices across all roads. This also means no more stickers plastered all over the front shield and no more endless queues at tolling stations. The inspiration for this solution came from our mobile operations and is based, and we were inspired by the way how we were able to solve these issues in EU. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. And now the floor to Commissioner Thyssen, please.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, this Commission is committed to put social fairness at the heart of our initiatives to deepen the internal market. Providing services across borders is a cornerstone of the internal market. This is especially the case for the transport sector, which plays a crucial role in the European economy and employs no less than 11 million people. As Maros and Violetta indicated, today's mobility package contains an important set of measures to ensure fairness in the internal transport market. Fairness, that means adequate social protection for workers and fair competition between transport companies. I will focus in particular on two initiatives: the rules for posting of workers in the transport sector and the rules on rest time and working time. First, on posting. The position of this Commission has always been that the Posting of Workers Directive is applicable to the road transport sector. It means that truck drivers, when they are operating on the territory of another member state, must in principle be paid according to the rules of that member state. This is the principle of equal pay for equal work at the same place, which, as you know, is of key importance for us. That being said, we also recognize the specificity of the highly mobile international road transport sector, and for that reason, when we tabled our proposal for a targeted amendment on the General Posting Directive in March last year, we indicated that sector-specific legislation would be suited. This sector-specific legislation is what we come up with today. It has three main components. First, for cabotage operations. These are operations whereby goods are loaded and unloaded within the same country. For cabotage operations, there is a clear and strong link with that country, and therefore the drivers should be paid according to the rules of that country from day one onwards. Let's say a Slovenian truck driver drops off a load in Milano, reloads in Milano to unload in Rome. For the time spent on the cabotage operation between Milan and Rome, Italian pay rules apply. Secondly, for international operations, these are operations where the loading and unloading takes place in different countries. Therefore, we clarify that there is a sufficient link with the country concerned only to the extent that the driver spends at least 3 days a month in that country. This minimum threshold will imply that for drivers who spend only a very limited amount of time on the territory of a country, for example, a German truck driver who only once delivers a package just across the border in Strasbourg, the French rules on pay will not have to be applied. It means, on the other hand, that a German driver who spends more than 3 days a month in France carrying out international operations must, for the time spent in France, be paid according to the French rules. And thirdly, we simplify the administrative procedures that transport companies have to comply with when posting drivers abroad, making maximum use of digital tools to exercise controls. For example, transport companies will no longer be required to appoint a local representative in the host country. Prior notifications to the host country can be done for several drivers at a time and on a 6-month basis instead of for each operation separately. Drivers will no longer be obliged to keep paper copies of pay slips and employment contracts in the truck. They can provide those along also through digital means at roadside checks. Inspectors will be able to control compliance more effectively, whilst paperwork for companies will be reduced, and this is a triple win for businesses, for workers, and for national enforcement authorities. Ladies and gentlemen, we are convinced that this is a balanced package. It takes care of the interests of transport workers and of transport businesses. It brings legal clarity in an area which today is highly contested. And last but not least, it sets clear, fair and enforceable rules that will be valid across the Union so that there will no longer be a need nor a justification for ad hoc measures by individual member states. Ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to resting time and working time, our proposals provide more flexibility to organize international transport operations in an efficient way, but at the same time ensure better conditions for workers, to take up resting time. The new rules foresee, for example, that drivers do not take their regular weekly rest in the cabin of their truck. Accommodation, this means suitable accommodation with adequate sleeping and sanitary facilities, should be provided by employers during long-distance transport operations. In addition, we are consulting social partners on how to best ensure the 48-hour per week working time limitation in a sector where demand can vary substantially from 1 week to the other and from 1 month to the other. I firmly believe that today's legislative package will create a better playing field in our internal market. It will enable businesses to operate in a stable and certain legal framework, and it will be a legal framework with rules that are clear and fair for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Let's open the floor to questions. Yes, please. No, you have to take the microphone, please.
Bergrath von der Zeitschrift Fernfahrer aus Deutschland. Meine Frage ist, was diese Flexibilität der Ruhezeiten angeht. Ist es den Fahrern dann zukünftig erlaubt, 2- oder 3-mal hintereinander eine reduzierte Ruhezeit zu nehmen, oder wird der bestehende Rhythmus nicht geändert?
Well, the regel, yeah, I can speak Dutch also, yeah, of course. De regels over de rusttijd, de rusttijd die moet genomen worden, die worden niet veranderd, dus wat de duur betreft. Er zit wel meer flexibiliteit in die zin dat de chauffeurs die een normale wekelijkse rusttijd nemen, dat 1 buiten de cabine moet zijn. Dat is duidelijk, betere bescherming. Dat we zeggen ofwel thuis, ofwel in een behoorlijke accommodatie. En er wordt ook geëist dat minstens 1 keer per 3 weken dat de chauffeurs de kans moeten hebben om die regelmatige wekelijkse rusttijd thuis te nemen. Er is meer flexibiliteit in die zin dat daar waar er vroeger een regelmatige wekelijkse rusttijd voorzien was 1 maal per 2 weken, dat men nu zegt dat moet 2 maal zijn per 4 weken. Maar dus met veel betere beschermingsmaatregelen voor de werknemers. En wat ook voorzien is, ook een element van flexibiliteit, is dat wanneer chauffeurs bijna thuis zijn of bijna hun accommodatie bereiken waar ze op een behoorlijke manier van hun rust kunnen genieten, dat ze dan kunnen doorrijden, dus dat niet gebruikt wordt als drogreden om uiteindelijk weer opnieuw in die cabine te blijven gedurende die wekelijkse rusttijd.
Yes.
Pomecka, Polish Radio. I've got a question whether there was a unanimity among commissioners concerning the mobility package, and also how will you respond to drivers from Eastern and Central Europe saying that instead of helping, you're creating barriers, pushing them out of the market, especially in the Western Europe. Thank you very much. And also, why 3 days? Why 5 days, as it appeared previously in the proposal, wasn't a more appropriate proposal? Thank you.
Yeah. Well. First of all, this is not, again, a thing of dividing East and West. This is about applying legislation that exists. We have legislation on posting of workers. It exists already since 1996, and it is applicable to the transport sector. And the question is it really applied? Is it really implemented? And is it enforceable? Are the rules clear? When we launched our proposal for a targeted revision of the posting of workers in April last year, we said we need specific rules for the transport sector. And we worked on this. We consulted also many people. We worked on this to have clear rules so that we can ensure that they are applicable. We have an internal market with rules, and they must be implemented, and they must be enforceable. So for everybody, it's important to have clear rules, enforceable rules, and also fair rules. And then why the threshold of 3 days? Well, let me tell you, in the Posting of Workers Directive in general, there is no threshold. We say when people work in another member state, when they are sent to another member state to provide services there, the rules on remuneration of that member state. Now the minimum rate of pay, in the future equal all the elements of the remuneration that are obligatory to local workers will be obligatory also for posted workers. So this has to be paid. Here we create a threshold and we say not to be disproportional and not to make too many administrative burden and difficulties. To make it possible to really have an internal market, we allow a threshold of 3 days, but after those 3 days, if people are more than 3 days a month on the territory of another member state for international transport, then it's very clear at that moment the rules on remuneration foreseen in posting will apply.
Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe just to be really plastical on this one, because currently, let me describe you the current situation. Currently, 25 member states are not fulfilling their obligation to enforce the Posting of Workers Directive, while it, as my colleague said, clearly applies to the road transport sector from the first day, for both cabotage and international traffic. 3 member states have applied it, but really unproportionately. As you know, we started infringement procedures against them. This has started to lead to real fragmentation of the market, which by no means is the goal that we want to pursue. So what happened now? When I talked to the companies involved, when these 3 countries started to impose the special rules, which were unproportionate, I was asked for 2 things. Please make sure that international transport is not a subject of posting, and please make sure that you get rid of the administrative burdens. Today we're delivering on both. For 3 days, the international transport traffic is excluded from the Posting of Workers Directive, and we are dramatically decreasing the administrative burdens with our proposal. It will take a few years before we get there, but as it was mentioned before, the solution will be digital. We are moving towards administration-to-administration database solutions using digital formats in order to ensure that the workers are no longer driving around with a suitcase full of documents that they have to present. So this is a substantial improvement of the current situation. And I delivered on both elements that I was asked for.
And if you allow me just to add one more thing, because we, with Violetta and Marianne, we had several meetings with the social partners. And of course, as you can imagine, there have been different aspects of this very complex issue covered and discussed. But when you listen to the unions, but also to the operators, that what kind of administrative burden they had to face if this unproportional approach was decided by 3 of our member states. So you would be in the situation when that cabin for the truck was too small for all the papers, for all the documents, that some of our member states wanted to use the faxes for the notification. I don't know if we use the technology anywhere in Europe anymore. And that was the administrative burden which was really becoming prohibitive for our single market philosophy. And therefore, I think that I would say that our clear decision to proceed with the infringement, to make sure that if we apply the current legislation, we do it in a reasonable and proportional manner, plus that clarification which we are bringing today and the reduction of the administrative burden, which is around 1.4 billion euros for the industry, is quite significant. And I believe that not only the drivers from Central and Eastern Europe, but also drivers from Spain and Portugal, and in the end, also the drivers from the Central and Western European countries would benefit from the clarity from the more precision, how these rules should be applied, and from less of the administrative burden.
Thank you, Thomas Schmidt, Austria Press Agency. Commissioner Bulc, could you say a word on the financial implications of your proposal? I mean, you must have made an impact assessment, and there are first reactions from the Parliament, also from capitals, that say regarding road pricing, this would mean a substantial increase of costs for road users. And secondly, how much money is needed for member states to invest in a digital electronic toll system? Thank you.
If you're referring to the Eurovignette and the digitalization of road charging, the core message there is that the proposal that is part of the package is to ensure simplification and standardization of the tolling system across Europe. That doesn't mean that we are specifying how the application should look like, but what we are doing, we are setting up a framework that will use standard technology in order to ensure smooth deployment of tolling system across Europe. As I said very plastically before, instead of having 10 different boxes on your front shield, you will be able to establish a service relationship with the operator, the same as you do today for mobile operations in telephony, and you will be then able to travel across Europe based on the different charging schemes that will be used in member states. Let me be very clear, we are not making the road charging mandatory, but if you're going to use in the future, we're inviting all member states to think digital, which means it allows much more flexibility, it is much more transparent and easier to build on with value-added services and new technological solutions that are forthcoming in European transport in the future. Regarding the calculation that you mentioned, currently we talk to current toll system providers, and of course we took into consideration the depreciation periods that are needed in order to write off the existing technologies. At the same time, we talked to them about the interest and seek support, which we got, in order to move into the distance-based digital solutions that will be interoperable. What it means for the pricing, keeping in mind the possibility of inclusion of external costs in the road charging, following the principle of polluter pays and the user pays principle, we believe that these new systems will be much more efficient, they will be much better cost-price performance, and would ensure that there is more room for new services to be added in the future. Nothing that we proposed in this package has been done in the Commission's offices. Everything that we proposed, we discussed with our stakeholders, we discussed with different stakeholders from different parts of Europe, and this is the best proposals we could come up with in order to ensure the interests of different opinions in different member states.
I just would like to add one additional argument why this is important for the future, and I think we provided ample time for the gradual phase out and phase in of the new technologies of 2027. So I think we really have ample time to introduce this new technology, which would advance by then in a way which is even difficult for us to imagine. But why we need more of a smart approach and digital approach into the tolling into the future? Because what you will see in the second half of this year, we want simply to promote cleaner cars. And we see how important this is for our cities already today because of the congestion, because of the air pollution. And we simply believe that if you have a cleaner car, you should pay less because you pollute less for using the road infrastructure. And if you use zero-emission car, that you should be entitled up to the 75% of the discount on using the road infrastructure. I think so that, of course, would be done in much easier way if you would have a system which would be up-to-date, which would be digital, which would be smart. Thank you.
Oui, bonjour, Derek Perrotte pour les Échos. Est-ce que vous pouvez préciser un petit peu le fonctionnement des 3 jours par mois avant de tomber sous le coup du détachement? Est-ce que ça veut dire par exemple que si je passe 4 jours durant un mois en France, je suis un chauffeur polonais, je passe 4 jours en France. Les 3 premiers jours, je suis payé selon les conditions polonaises et le 4e selon les conditions françaises? Ou est-ce que le fait de passer plus de 3 jours fait que tous les jours doivent être payés selon les conditions locales? Et puis peut-être une précision sur le mode de calcul. Vous avez évoqué le fait, par exemple, de traverser la frontière pour quelques heures pour faire une... alors, si j'ai traversé pour 2 heures, ça me compte 2 heures ou une journée entière?
Ça, on peut l'adresser dans le briefing technique. Maintenant, le vice-président et le commissaire doivent partir pour le Parlement. Alors, on doit faire un peu vite. Ça sont des questions qui peuvent être adressées dans le briefing technique. Non, sont plutôt techniques. Quentin, tu peux les reposer dans une demi-heure, 15 minutes.
Bon, moi, malheureusement, ce n'est pas pour le briefing technique. Monsieur Šefčovič, Monsieur Trump est en train de partir de l'accord de Paris. Il y a eu plusieurs propositions, plusieurs suggestions de la part de ses conseillers ce matin dans la presse US, confirmées par plusieurs médias qui voulaient partir. Margaret Iskinas a parlé lundi que l'UE n'avait pas de plan B en cas que l'Union européenne sortirait de l'accord de Paris. Est-ce que ce serait possible d'avoir une réaction ou peut-être de savoir si la Commission européenne se prépare à ça?
Thank you very much for that question. I mean, we of course hear the rumors, and we know that this has been discussed in the Washington D.C. already since the moment new administration entered into the office. When I was in the White House myself, I was explaining that for Europe there is no plan B because we do not have the planet B, and that we are clearly convinced that this is very important not only for the planet, it's very important for the future of mankind. And I think that we have very clearly proven in Europe that the energy transition, use of the cleaner technologies, more production of the energy from renewables clearly bring the business sense. And I think that the business community in the United States is understanding this more and more. The solar industry in the United States is second biggest employer in energy sector after oil and gas. Texas has the third biggest energy production coming from the wind. We have 130 cities from the United States of America in the global covenant of mayors, which have to present, and they did, the sustainable plans for the future cities development. So I understand that if they decide to pull out, it would be disappointing, but I really don't think that this would change the course of mankind. Of course, what we are already feeling, there is much stronger expectation from our partners across the world, in Africa, in Asia, in China, that Europe should assume leadership in this effort, and we are ready to do that. We will clearly provide it because we are convinced that we do the right thing. We have very strong economic case. We have strong support of our population, and we would carry on. And I think that despite of this possible rollback of the U.S. administration, that the economic factors in U.S. would prevail in the end. But Europe is ready for the leadership, and we will definitely provide it.
Okay, we can take one last question before passing to the technical briefing, and then...
Thank you. Laurel Henning from MLEX. This might fall into the technical briefing, but I'm going to try anyway. The proposals on relating to VECTO and the monitoring of emissions, I'm just trying to understand the difference between the original presentation of VECTO and the proposal now. And if we spend so much time on working on those monitoring rules, is there a risk of Europe falling behind other counterparts in the rest of the world, so US and Asia, who already have those fuel standards in place by spending this time on monitoring? Thanks.
I will start, and maybe Violeta will conclude, and Violeta will continue, and I'm sure that our colleagues will go into all details in the technical briefing. I just would like to say why this is important. And this is important because really we are the last major economy which pays so much attention to the clean environment, to fighting the climate change, which doesn't have this very important sector covered. We have seen how the road freight transport is becoming more and more important. That is developing in a way that it's one of the major contributors of the greenhouse gas emissions and air pollution in Europe, and that we are the economy which, I mean, doesn't have the standard introduced, even though in the United States or even in China, this is already the case. At the same time, I think we've been listening very carefully to the car manufacturers and heavy-duty truck manufacturers from Europe, telling us, look, you know, our industry is unique, every truck is unique, therefore we need, you know, the specific approach. And we told them, yes, of course, we understand that, and therefore we want to collect the evidence. This is what we decided today. We are starting to collect the evidence, the data, so we can analyze them properly. This vector approach is the most sophisticated one we have at our disposal. And then we would assess the results and come up with a proposal early next year, which I believe would be, of course, ambitious, but at the same time realistic, and which would reflect these European specificities.
Final word.
Not much to add to what it's been said, but I'd just like to say that we learned from mistakes of the past. We know how important the methodologies for calculations are, and it is really important that we do it right because of the growth that is expected, which is over 40% expected growth in passengers traffic, and it's even higher, over 60% expected growth in cargo. So this is a high responsibility, and we want to make sure that we have the right framework in order to address this growth.
Thank you, Vice President. Thank you, Commissioner Bulc. Thank you, Commissioner Thyssen. This concludes the press conference on the mobility package. Now, shortly, a technical briefing will follow where all the questions you have can be addressed.